just apropos the whole restructuring thing, just to piggyback off of what you're saying, so my understanding is that ultimately what is being restructured is the structural integrity of each corner of the triangle of conflict. So feelings and impulses have their own structural integrity. Anxiety has its own structural integrity as the defense pole has. So they lose that integrity when they get mushed together and conflated. So now there's a loss of structural integrity for that particular corner. So restructuring means reestablishing the structural integrity of each corner so that the patient can experience feelings and impulses as feelings and impulses, anxiety as apart from that, distinct from that, and defenses as apart and distinct from that. So that is restructuring. That's what's being restructured, the poles on the triangle.
But I really appreciated the open stance he's having here.
Me too. I think it was one of the most important passages ever. And just in case you're not remembering or you missed that part, what he's saying is that if the therapist is not sure if the patient response is coming from the bottom corner or one of the upper corners, to just accept that they don't know. Don't jump to a conclusion. Don't be presumptuous. Just, you don't know, and let it be at that. Just basically hang out in not knowing until you have more clarity, which is such an important thing because all too often the therapist is anxious and just feels that they have to know all the time, and they just come to some conclusion that may not be the case.
Everybody.
Very familiar faces there. Hello, all.
Yes. So
Hi, Robert.
people might still trickle in, but it is start time. So why don't we get after it? I will start us off by asking you all if you had any thoughts about when Davanloo asked the patient on page 71, "Do you want to damage me?" And she says, "No, I don't want to damage you." And then later on page 86, the theme again comes up, "I don't want to damage you." I'd be curious if any of you had thoughts about that.
I I do, but let other people go first.
I think you can go in. Go for it.
Okay. You know, it was very touching for me because the therapist who saved my life, um, I remember like a year or two into the 10-year experience, this was psychoanalytic therapy, object relations. Um, I had the most poignant experience. I said to Richard, Richard, I want to protect you from my anger. I
Mm,
had never said that to anybody.
mm,
And so I know the state of mind that
mhm,
when you get developed to a point at
mhm,
which you are not splitting so badly, uh, and you love, and you can feel your loving feelings. I mean, I just love this man. He's one of the most important people in my life. And I know I was filled with rage because of my early trauma. I mean, just boiling over.
mhm,
But I felt so,
mm,
I felt committed. I had a new experience. I felt that I loved and was grateful to him so much that I prayed that none of my wrath would ever be visited on him.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
very, very,
It's very touching. It's very
it,
touching.
it,
Thank you
it
for sharing.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And then I think you're putting a finger on at least what I was wondering about, which is whether or not when she said, "I don't want to damage you," whether that was negation and reaction formation, like she was protecting him. She did indeed want to damage him. That thought came to mind, but I saw that Davanloo was interpreting the communication as an expression of her positive feelings rather than a negation.
Uh-huh.
So I was curious if others had thoughts about that.
I also, it made me think about a point that I was noticing throughout the article
Mhm.
when uh, even before
Mhm.
that it seems like Davanloo makes a lot of effort and a lot of his interventions, pressures, and challenge are in order to help the patient hold her conflict.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, so At that point, I felt like he wanted to try to help her hold a conflict between her wanting to damage him and wanting to protect him.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see how um, is she with this conflict. Where
Yes.
earlier he wanted to check how is she holding the conflict about wanting to be
Yeah.
to open up, but then being passive or can or not able to say what she feels.
Mhm.
Um, um, those are my thoughts.
Those are excellent. Thank you for that, Yair. I really appreciate it. Really, really astute. Anybody else, either about this or something else altogether?
Well, I'll speak about this.
Yes.
Um, I'm not quite sure in the context of what Davanloo was doing there, but I frequently find people not willing to address their anger with me in a violent form, and they wouldn't want to damage me because I would never do that. And I think that's lack of awareness or honesty or denial or negation. And then as we get further into it, they're more willing to damage me, and then hopefully we get the breakthrough to the grief about this. So they then wouldn't want to damage me, or they're sad that they damaged me. So there's two levels of this in
Oh,
different parts of the
mhm.
of therapy I frequently experience.
Makes sense. Because her impulse was to grab him by the lapels and shake him, and eventually, in part two, to throw him down on the floor. And there's a certain amount of damage that would come from that, surely.
Mm, sure. Um,
But that was her breakthrough moment, wasn't it?
Hmm.
A breakthrough of the rage. And
Yeah, in the transference, and then it quite quickly moved to core figures from her past.
there's a very interesting passage in Hannah Siegel's book about Melanie Klein's theory. And I when I first read it, I said that's asinine. That's foolish. That was about what 40 or 50 years ago that I read it. But at any rate, um, she was talking about how Klein talks about the integration of love and hate, and how when there's been too much trauma, there's this fear that the hate will destroy the love, and that it can be the mother's breast milk, the feeding that and that closeness that brings about the ability to integrate the love and the hate. And that is exactly kind of what I felt. I felt like Richard had given me so much breast milk that I never got,
Mhm.
and that I just was so grateful.
Mhm.
Uh, I just would never want to harm him.
Right,
And
right.
it was a huge step forward for me in
Mhm.
emotional growth.
Mhm. That's very touching. Sounds like you had a very meaningful course of treatment.
10 years.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God, he changed. He saved my life. He really did.
Mm,
Gave me my mind.
mm. That's why I'm here too. I'm late 20s and had such a powerful experience of ISTDP therapy. I knew after the first session somehow that I would spend the rest of my life trying to return the favor.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that kind of depth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I left feeling light as a feather. I remember that.
Oh,
Standing there at the bus stop waiting for the bus. Oh, hey, we got James, we got Steve.
Thank you. Hang on. Thank you for you both before you go back to admin. Thank you both, Anne and Johannes, for sharing
oh,
your personal stuff.
thank you, Robert.
And we interwoven with psychoanalytic thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So either about this, your experience with personal therapy, or what we're talking about in terms of the Davanloo transcript, or anything else from the reading. Who wants to chime in?
But I should wait because I've already spoken. Let other people speak.
Yeah. Let's see if other voices want to come in, but let's fold you in a minute. I would love to hear.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And it was amazing, I thought, that she said no, because I can get away with having my wall up with the other therapist, whereas with you, I can't, and I'm here to do the hard work. That was huge.
Right. Right, right.
What a testament to their good work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Max, how about you? What did you think about it?
I didn't manage to finish the reading, unfortunately. But I just felt it was like just such a classic case. I see so much of like my teachers in it, that really pride themselves on the DISTDP, like the very Davanlooian style. So much of them in this, and um, yeah, just like a really classic like head-on collision, really just like classic, anxiety, feeling defense, triangle work, and but still, at the beginning, this was the one where she comes in and she talks about the previous therapist, and there was a screen, and it was sounded completely unethical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And yeah, I was like, that was so crazy. And but then what was amazing about it was he wasn't like, oh, you poor thing. He was like, oh, so you have a tendency to go along and be compliant. You went along with this man that would take advantage of you.
Mhm.
And that was that's just so
mm,
um
on
well,
point.
it's just really interesting,
On point.
say
Mhm.
what?
It's on point.
It's super on point. But I think a lot of people think therapy, you can get stuck on like really kind of why you would say basically collapsing into the victim position and really exploring like
Mhm.
how, yeah, they were taken advantage of, and just hang out there for like weeks. And he just is like, no, we need to, essentially saying we need to look at your part in that. And so just really interesting.
It is. It seems to be a manifestation of really believing in the patient's potential. If you think about it, if he didn't really believe in her potential, he might have coddled her and they would have hung out there, like you just said. But he's so strength-based from that point of view.
That's such a great point, and yeah, such an inspiring thing about ISTDP. Um, and I think it's important when we think about those interventions to really come from a strength-based perspective. Like that's where we're coming from, and not a critical perspective. And a lot of people when I talk about ISTDP or talk about it, they think it's so critical. Like you read it, and some people will read it and it come across as critical, or like that you're shaming them or something, or blaming the victim. People say,
Right.
but actually, really, it's strength based, and we always want to be reminding ourselves to be coming from that position and belief in the client, and a stand for, like your website is called, I think, a stand for their health, and yeah, so great stuff. Yeah, great stuff.
That's right. And also, he wrote in the article that the therapist has to take care not to create an atmosphere of rejection. So he's direct and he tries to get after things, but he also goes out of his way to avoid that there's going to be an atmosphere of rejection. I thought that was really on the mark as well.
If I
Okay.
can jump in,
Yeah, just
go ahead, Jake.
sorry.
Let's see. So there was Yair, but there was also someone else. Who was that other person?
Oh, that was me,
James.
Johannes.
Oh, James. Let's do
Go ahead,
James
Jake.
and Yair, and then Ann.
Oh, you have to excuse me. I've got influenza.
Oh,
Ugh.
But just
sorry.
on that, what Max was saying, there was a moment there where there was the first breakthrough to sadness, and Davanloo makes a note. At this point, the therapist must be careful not to become supportive.
Oh yeah.
And so, just on what you were saying, I think he's also aware in that moment of maybe his own tendencies with a breakthrough of sadness to
Mm.
switch and become more supportive, but he
Mm.
keeps supporting the patient in the way you were talking about. So I think it's evident throughout the transcript,
Mhm.
this focusing on the strength and staying on task,
Mhm.
and yeah, that he made that note maybe was a reflection of his own
Mhm.
maybe momentary
Mhm.
feeling for her, and then wanting to become more supportive, and then reminding himself and us not to do that in that moment
Yes.
because it wasn't necessary. Yeah.
That's right. So, James, apropos what you're saying, so personally, I found this case to be absolutely brilliant. I think it's one of the most important, if not the most important transcript that
I
he
agree.
produced. And so, not too much to criticize from my point of view in terms of this transcript, but there's a different transcript, and I can't remember which one it is, where he is thinking just along those lines that you brought up there, James. And I felt he went too far. And it had to do with keeping the patient waiting. Something like having to cancel the appointment and then being late. And he said, you might think that it would be good to apologize here, but then that would not be good. And I just thought, come on, just apologize.
Hmm.
That would be an area where I think he can go a little too far in that direction myself. So Yair and then Ann.
Also, following Max's comments, um, I think what you were saying is that one of the things that stand out in ISTDP and in Davanloo style is the idea that you are not there in therapy helping the patient to deal with their problems, but you are helping the patient to find to reconnect to their own potential and their own strength in
Mhm.
dealing with their problems.
Mhm.
And I then thought about I don't know if Davanloo said or I remember John Fredrickson said something like that. Is that it's not our interventions or it's not the getting to the emotional experience or getting insight that heals the patient. It's the UTA that the rise in the UTA that heals the patient that allows the process of healing.
Mhm.
So I think it's also
Mhm.
in line that we know that we need to believe in the patient's potential and we need to call
Mhm.
this potential, call this UTA because we know that this will be the force that if
Mhm.
the patient will be connected to it, then the healing process can unfold, or then we can
Yeah, I love that.
support it. We support that.
That's right. We support the unleashing of the UTA. I love it. I think it might have been Fredrickson. I've heard him say that. And I think, just real quick, I think that also explains why, who was it? It was one of you who said something to the effect of, Harrison, I think it was you, sort of the good enough experience of the feelings. It's like, okay, the patient has acknowledged it, it's good enough, let's keep it moving. So, because apropos what you're saying, Ayer, that if the acknowledgement and the experience of the feelings is sufficient, then the UTA will take charge and get behind the wheel, and more spontaneous, important material will be forthcoming, and you're off and running. Like there's no need. The point isn't to intensify the feeling for its own sake. The point is to unleash the UTA. And if there was sufficient experience, that will do that.
Even that last bit when he told her, okay, so you'd prefer the other therapist. Her response was evidence that the UTA is in charge. He
Mhm.
says, "No, what you're saying to me is a lie. It's not the truth. The real truth is that
Mhm.
right, I have the potential and I have the strength to go through this hard process, and it will be beneficial for me."
Yeah. 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 Agreed. So let's see. I think it was you, Ann. Come on. Coming
I
in.
just want to say thank you, Yair. That was really wonderfully said. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, uh, all right, now I've got two things. One, the first one is a soapbox, so get ready. Ever since I first got into ISTDP, I have been livid at Davanloo for the way he asks about the neurobiological pathway, like what's going on in your body. And I say, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to read this. There's three possible reasons. The language barrier is the least of our problems, but the wording, can't he seem to ask the wording and then whether he's being provocative or not? That's the three things. So first, the wording. He can't seem to ask a simple, clear question. Why doesn't he ask something to the effect of somatic experience of the neurobiological pathway. Oh, this, I'm sorry, that's not well said, of their core feelings. Like, why can't he say, okay, you're angry. That's your feeling. It's very important. Now, all basic feelings have a concomitant, a simultaneous physical, somatic experience or sensations. If you can't feel the accompanying physical sensations in your body, they will turn into anxiety and defense, thereby diminishing your emotional awareness and strength. So where in your body do you experience the sensations of anger? What are the sensations you feel? Do you sense, feel any sensations in your stomach, chest, shoulders, blah, blah, blah? So that's that point. Like, and is he not doing that? Not because of a language barrier, but because Malon could have straightened that out. Oh no, no, no. Anyway, but what about provocation? What is being asked of the patient is left hidden or unspoken, confusing to both the patient and the therapist, when I was reading it, who can't figure out what in the world he's asking them to do,
Hmm.
followed by a therapist explanation. Now, after they work that around, then after that, the therapist could explain one of the first most important tasks is to awaken, to develop your awareness, to experience the sensations in your body that accompany your feelings. Until you're able to do that, you'll confuse them with impulse, anxiety, and defense.
Okay.
I have just been,
Yeah, livid about it. Thanks for,
yeah, thanks.
yeah. Well, can I speak to that before you go to part two?
Yeah, oh, yeah. I want to hear what what y'all think.
Well, for starters, I think there could be some legitimacy to your criticism. I imagine that there's certainly a set of patients that could benefit from what you're talking about,
Mhm.
or more just straightforward instruction and
Mhm.
coaching and psychoeducation. Absolutely. So, point well made, point well taken. Having said that, I think that a good deal of his interventions are not to elicit an actual answer, but to produce a result,
Mhm.
aiming for an intrapsychic crisis, assuming he's engaging the protocol of major mobilization. So it isn't so much like the right answer, the patient says the right thing. It's to produce the result of really having the unconscious become conscious. Does that help at all?
Isn't that provocative?
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So by provocative, I'm assuming you mean intentionally trying to,
Frustrate and anger the patient because
yeah,
I can't
whip
figure
up.
out what to say, what he
Right,
wants, what
right.
he's asking, what he's asking.
Yeah, it could be. I don't think that he would see it that way, but you could be right. So let's hash it out.
I
Do
don't think he would necessarily means to do it, but but it does that. Anyway.
I agree that it can do that. I'm not sure it automatically by default.
Right. No, not for everybody.
Right, but it could do that. So in concrete terms, you're talking about, so you're angry. How do you experience that anger, or how do you experience that physically? That still doesn't say how you feel it. That still doesn't say how you feel it. Is that what you're referring to, or something else?
Yeah, yeah, in short.
In short, that is
But
what you're.
how you wouldn't say how you're feeling it because then they'd confuse sensation, physical sensation with feeling. You have to say, okay, you feel angry. That's very important.
Mm.
Now, along with that, there's a concomitant, of course, that's too big a word to use, but a concomitant sensation in the body. They happen simultaneously. Are you aware of any sensations in your body? And then the other things I said, just that sort of.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I agree. Some people would really benefit from that. But let's hear it from others.
Yeah,
What do you all think about what Anne is saying and how I responded to it?
unless they're not.
Sometimes I have it a lot during therapy and doing when I watch again the session or bring session to supervision. When I ask a patient what he feel or how he experience it, sometimes I get a little mixed up with myself. Is my aim at the question to get an answer, like to get to the feeling or to experience, or is my question a way to expose the dynamic organization of is resistance versus UTA.
Hmm.
I mean, when I ask him how do you experience it, even if he says, I want to leave, the room right now, it's a good answer because now I know his tendency, the patient's tendency to mix up his internal experience of the emotion with his action tendency, with his defense. Now I can point it out to him. You see, you tell me this is what you want to do with it, but this doesn't say how you feel. And I think it connects my thoughts to this idea that Davanloo has of restructuring the patient differences, which also this article is amazing in helping me understand what does Davanloo mean by restructuring.
Yep.
And one thing that I think one aspect of it is that helping the patient be aware of what is happening inside of him, what is happening, and like doing to differentiate. This is an emotion. This is an action tendency. This is my anxiety. This is what I do to deal with my emotion to get away. So
Right.
I think what's the purpose of asking someone how do you feel? Is the person is to get to the feeling or to help the person get a better understanding of what's going on inside of him?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I don't know for sure, but my sense is that Davanloo has a kind of faith that there is a part, maybe submerged in the unconscious, but nevertheless, there is a part inside the patient that knows the answer to the question, that is experiencing the emotion. And from that point of view, it's not a provocation, it's an expression of that faith. So that would be to respond to the idea. Let's hear from Stephen, and then you can speak again, Anne. Stephen. Oh, Stephen, you're muted. No, we still don't hear you. Stephen, I still don't hear you. What's going on? Are you all hearing him? I see his lips.
No,
No.
no.
Okay. Um, no, no, no. There's something going on, Stephen. Steve, I'm so sorry. There's something going on. While you figure it out, Anne, please.
Still muted.
Well, oh, there you go. Are you there, Stephen?
Stephen? No, no, we're still
Oh,
not.
no, no, okay, okay. I'm not talking about the issue of feeling so much. That's much simpler. I'm talking about the enormous difficulty of awakening a neurobiological pathway in the body that has been shut down because of all kinds of trauma. So that is so difficult. But he doesn't, and Davanloo just doesn't, and it's such a central need. I mean, you really can hardly go forward in many ways until you get the neurobiological pathway awakened. And he doesn't give a person a clear sense of what the task is. And it's such a crucial task. Why doesn't he make it a little bit easier or a little bit clearer for the patient? Anyway, I know what you're talking about how, yeah, well, then the patient will get up and leave, and then he can identify that as a defense and so on. But that's all like throwing everything in a big bowl and mixing it around instead of trying to help with this essential step of awakening the body.
No, I think there's merit to what you're saying, and I think that there really are a good deal of patients that would be better helped through the approach that you're talking about. So I can understand that you probably want to grab him by the lapels.
Yes.
Yeah, get it. Thank you for so passionately sharing that. Stephen, are you with us? There you are. We see you. You look great. Your lips are moving, but nothing is coming out. Yeah. If you
Oh, how frustrating. I'm
yeah,
so
if you want to type it, Stephen, if you want to type it in the chat box, I will read it out loud for you. So yeah, do that. And then while we wait for that to come through, I see I don't know who was first, either Bo or Harrison. One of you. Bo, go right ahead. Harrison is deferring to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I think what I'm hearing you say, Ann, is like it's very simple, right? Like we're watching a scary movie. It's like, why doesn't she or he run to that door when it's right there? It's obvious, right? They could see it, right? Why don't they do why don't they pick up the hammer and protect themselves, right? Kind of thing. It's obvious. Davanloo is trying to help them see their processes, and he's not. It doesn't feel like he's tapping into the MVPs, as you were kind of saying earlier. Like, why doesn't he do it? Right? Why doesn't he point out these somatic pathways that helps? It's part of the evocation of the emotion, right? That visceral kind of experience, right? That he's having. You're able to hear me okay with the air conditioner on, kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying, Ann? Kind of a little bit, kind of.
It is. Most of it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's that piece that Max has brought up before, kind of thing about the iatrogenic experience, right? Because every relationship we have, right, there's some kind of experience with this, right? Can I give a here and now example, Ian?
Sure.
And I'm going to do this with the utmost respect. So earlier, you were talking about a very powerful experience.
Yes.
And even right now, I feel reluctant to comment on this because
I'm
we're
fine.
being recorded right now, right? So there's
I'm
a part
fine.
of me holding back, right? Kind of thing. And I've got my own reasons for that kind of stuff. But in my own experience of you, when you were doing that, I was vicariously living through that experience with you. I felt myself holding back tears that wanted to come to my eyes. I felt my throat start to choke up a little bit. I felt warmth in my chest and my belly as I
Mhm.
could experience both sides of your experience, right? Of that being in those experiences where you feel frustration and hatred, visceral hatred, and then loving feelings that combat with one another with somebody, right? And I felt that through you as you were describing that earlier. And I felt a need to comment about it, but I also felt a need to hold back. Part of that was recording, part of that was being respectful for Johannes, kind of, mitigating to all of us kind of thing, and respectful to others. And so I think it's around us all the time. It's just finding that window to tap into it, right? So like we were sitting there, like watching this movie, right? And going, why doesn't the character do this or that? Why doesn't Davanloo do this or that? Right? Kind of thing. And I've been there too. I was kind of wondering that same experience that you were kind of pointing out, right? You're reading your own dialogue in that. And I think what happens is that there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There's letting windows into a problem, and maybe that was the right one, right? I mean, you and I are thinking, why didn't he do that? Maybe at that moment he was thinking that he was in another window, right? There was something else kind of going on, right, through that experience. I don't know, but I think it's a very good question that you're asking, Ann. That's
Oh,
all I got to say about that. So
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. And for resonating so strongly with the
yes, that's very touching.
Yeah,
Very.
it is. Yeah, it is. And I also resonated and had emotions when you share that, Anne. So yes, thank you. I have some thoughts about that, but before, let's get to, well, oh, hang on. Well, actually, Harrison, and then I'm going to read what Stevens.
Right, Harrison.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on, there's also been a lot of talk on the listserv about deficit versus conflict, kind of dialectical tension. And as I was reading it, there was a section, I think when she takes a helpless stance, where I did feel like he was a bit more hammering away than I might. But the way I took it is, for people where restructuring is needed, there's and graded format, there's still this kind of, I think, implicit understanding and trust and faith that this person has enough of the building blocks there. It just needs to be restructured and the poles of the triangle clarified. But I think we all know there are people where it's not restructuring, it's like construction for the first time, where they
Exactly.
might need more psychic integration, where, yeah, just badgering away at them, how do you feel it in your body? It's
Yeah.
really not going to get anywhere with those people.
No.
But in people where it's more graded format that's needed, and it's less, building it for the first time, but just putting things in an organized fashion, maybe the pressure and the challenge of it is enough to, get their, you know, unconscious knowledge that had been buried to come back alive, where they, still have that capacity, whereas, some patients really don't, and you really got to guide them more while holding their hands. I think we've all had patients who are at that level where you kind of know the blocks aren't there. You got to build it for the first time.
Mhm.
Well put. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. real quick, I'm just going to say something, and then I'm going to read what Stephen wrote. So, at the beginning of the case, when Davanloo keeps bringing her attention to her physiology and the physical experience, it's actually not to activate the pathway. It's to regulate. It's to titrate the experience of the approach, of the pressure. And so you're looking at two different animals. There's the question of what are you experiencing in the body, or how are you experiencing that in the body? And the clinical objective is to titrate intensity, because the patient can now intellectualize about sensations. That's a totally different animal than trying to get the person fired up in their body. So how are you feeling that in the body in the context of really trying to mobilize is very different. So
Yeah.
just so you can keep that straight. His intention is not to get her pathway to fire up. It's actually to titrate intensity. And you'll see that if you read carefully. Yeah. So just to keep that in mind.
Yep.
Okay. Now let's see from Stephen. Sorry that we're not hearing you, Stephen. So this is now Stephen. So with some clients, I ask, quote, so as we talk about your father/mother other, what do you feel right now in your body? End of quote. And the client responds, quote, nothing. End of quote. It seems to me that the client has calloused over the feeling as it is unacceptable or unpermitted. And that is a defense. But also, that is a struggle, as when you listen to sad stories of the client, one naturally feels anger or outrage towards the client's past object who did something nasty towards them. But the client states he feels nothing. And then sometimes they confuse anger and anxiety. Yeah, I've had that experience too, Stephen. Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, anybody in response to that or something else altogether?
Well, I'd like to dwell a little bit onto this. I take everyone's talking about this idea about how we're feeling it in the body, and I don't think he dwelt too long on that. I thought he moved on relatively quickly, and I'm seeing him say we're taking a graded approach here because of her depressive experiences, and then he's suddenly in the ballpark of a head-on collision. And I'm always thinking, oh, I'm going to hold the head-on collision for way down when they're already much more structured. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm thinking, here he is jumping in. And then he doesn't actually dwell on the experience in the body, but he quickly points out that her hands are doing something. So he moves, sometimes he's moving right in there, and sometimes he's backing right off. And he is in this somehow dance with this person that he's reading, now forward, now back. And he does that so beautifully. And I'm sitting there thinking, how is he picking that up? To move forward, to move back. He's obviously either very intellectual about it and done a lot of times, very experienced, or he's in tune somehow at some deep interpsychic connection with this person. That's what I want.
Yeah, I want that too.
Beautiful.
He's in the moment. He's not following some
Yeah,
rigid protocol formula. He's in the moment and responding to what's
yeah,
happening. Yeah, it's beautiful.
yeah,
It really is.
yeah. And I feel so klutzy, and I presume most of us have that experience. Uh, I look for the formula, and then I see the person, and I'm doing the switch between the two.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh,
Get your input.
can I no, because Robert, you brought in something that I also was wondering about while I'm reading, because sometimes he writes and he explains in the article why he why he moved to more pressure, why he moved to the transference, and there is a part in page 59. Yeah, I think it's the page 59 where he said that he reduces the pressure by returning to inquiry. It seems like his sign that he needs to reduce the pressure is that the patient declared she was angry towards her boyfriend, but then when he added the pressure and challenged it, she backed up for him. She said, "No, I didn't.
Yep.
And Davanloo writes that the fact that she retracts was
Yep.
a sign for him that he might, if he will pressure it, her anxiety will go too high, and he retract. And I really was like, but there are times where I will say to the patient, but you see, now you're taking it back. First you said angry, but now do you see how you want to take it back?
Mhm.
I was wondering how Davanloo saw it as a
Yeah.
sign of that he needs to reduce the pressure.
It's a great question. You know, I'd have to look at it again, but my sense is that it's the combination of the retraction, which I think he interprets as a sort of primitive form of denial,
Hmm.
touch with reality, and maybe an absence of striated signals at that moment. And maybe just something else like intuition or something. I'm not sure. But I agree. That was a really, really interesting passage. Do other people have thoughts about that?
Yeah, that stood out to me too. Yeah, yeah. And I had the same question in my mind. Why this moment? Why is this so obvious? You know, that it would be too anxiety provoking to sort of challenge the retraction. And the conclusion I came to was that when I reread it, it felt like maybe that would have been at that point in the alliance engaging more in a like an argument, you know, with the client about their feelings.
Mhm.
And that seemed to make sense to me at that in that moment there wasn't enough of the alliance on board to challenge such an overt retraction, and
Mhm.
it would have ended up more in a dispute with the patient.
Mhm.
That's how I read it.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I think an important factor, which is the backdrop, which is that Davanloo is really concerned that the treatment could exacerbate her depression, either trigger a depressive episode and then exacerbate it. He's really concerned about that. That's his whole rationale for going into restructuring because of her depressive history. So I think that's part of it too. I think he's worried. He's worried about that.
And I can relate to that, but in a totally different context. Um, when I was fairly new in working with ICDP, I had a client who had clearly Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. There's no question about it, but there's nobody else around who would actually do therapy with her. Anyone who would do therapy could launch right into a dangerous situation. So I'm sitting there very delicately balanced on that. How much is too much? You know, and any sense I would then bring it down, and I sense that Davanloo is doing exactly that at that point.
That's right. Yeah, there's two times in the transcript when he refers to the need to reduce anxiety. The first time he writes about it, he says when the therapist senses that the anxiety is too high. And the second time he writes about it, he says when the therapist observes clear markers that the anxiety is too high. So there could be an intuitive component in all of this. Sophia, sorry, Sophia.
Yes. Nice to see you all, and I'm really enjoying the discussion.
Good to see you.
You.
I thought I would add something that I thought a lot about when I read it. I enjoyed both the first part and the second part. And with respect to part one, there were some meta-psychological stuff that I was thinking a lot about when I read it, and related to the restructuring and the idea of restructuring. What is it that is restructured? What is the restructuring process, like concretely? And I found myself appreciating that he really talks about three different mechanisms that all can result in or contribute to depression.
Wait, and
Sorry, is that noise from me
yeah, I'm
or?
not sure. Yeah, let's make sure that noise goes away. So here, I'm gonna mute everybody, and then Sophia, I want you to unmute yourself. That should take care of it. Okay, unmute yourself, Sophia.
I unmuted it.
Good, go.
Yeah, now it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what he really deals with, and he also talks about it to a certain extent, but I really wish he could have done it even more. And I wrote that in my commentary to you, Johannes. But he really talks about what you can call like the depressive defense, the psychosomatic defense, and the character defense.
Mhm.
And and they seem to all be present in the patient, and it's like as if they rotate a bit, and it's as if when he changes his position and his interventions, it's as if he senses that one is more in the front than the other. So for example, and what you need to restructure differs between the three mechanisms. That's at least how I simplified it in my head. So with the depressive mechanism, it's like the instant repression, like of the aggressive impulse, and what you want to do is undo it and like change the direction of it. And in the psychosomatic defense, which maybe Anne is something what you were talking about, is like because when you instantly repress the aggressive impulse, at least it's there. But in the psychosomatic defense, like it's more somatization, like it's the energies is discharged into the right into the body, like the physical body. And you kind of have to, the restructuring is about helping the patient to like metabolize the energy and represent it in the psyche, so that if it's there, then you can begin to like internalize it or whatever. But it's like it's two different levels of psychic functioning. At least that's how I think about it in my head. And then the character defense is, of course, the when you put up the wall. And so the restructuring there is about you want to take down something that is there so you can let the stuff behind the wall pour out, sort of like. So that's just what I thought about in my head. And he talks a lot about the instant repression.
Yeah.
But he talks less about the two others, but he still talks about that there's a different mechanism, like there's different types of depressions. So yeah, and the second thing with the in terms of restructuring that I wanted to add is that I'm really impressed by the fact that, at least the way I read it, he really just does. I mean, it's one event that the patient has of the anger, and it's as if he's like, yeah, the restructuring is done, and now we can challenge. And I'm just really, and it works. And I'm just like, is it really that simple? Like, I'm really like, I'm kind of speechless because it seems so simple. And of course it's not, but yeah. So.
Thank you for that. Brilliant. I think that was really, really astute. Just apropos the whole restructuring thing, just to piggyback off of what you're saying, so my understanding is that ultimately what is being restructured is the structural integrity of each corner of the triangle of conflict. So feelings and impulses have their own structural integrity. Anxiety has its own structural integrity, as the defense pole has. So they lose that integrity when they get mushed together and conflated. So now there's a loss of structural integrity for that particular corner. So restructuring means reestablishing the structural integrity of each corner so that the patient can experience feelings and impulses as feelings and impulses, anxiety as apart from that, distinct from that, and defenses as apart and distinct from that. So that is restructuring. That's what's being restructured, the poles on the triangle. Let's see. I think Harrison, I think you're up.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I had to step away. I might have missed a couple things, but I wanted to point out on page 64 where he's talking about the phenomenon of mirage, which he may have written about in other places. This is the first time I remember reading about mirage in this case specifically. But I thought, you know, and I don't mean to say this as a criticism, but often his writings sound so sure of what he's saying and quite, concrete, and some people, might say dogmatic, but I think this paragraph was so good for me to read because he really demonstrates an open stance here. Like, don't be too sure of anything here. Don't go in with, prejudgments. Keep your eyes open, see what's happening. It could be a mirage. It could be the real thing. But you just got to pay attention to differentiate between them. So I really like that unknowing open stance that he's demonstrating here, and how, the way I view him, it's been so often said that he kind of came to his way of working just intuitively. And then with Malin and other people, they kind of came with the theory to explain his intuition. I don't know how true that is, but I feel like he just kind of has an intuition with this patient where he kind of knows that in one session I can push and I can reconstruct. I mean, restructure anxiety and the triangle in a way that he might not attempt to do in one session with another person. I think there's just something he gets about this person. She's capable of it. So, but I really appreciated the open stance he's having here.
Me too. I think it was one of the most important passages ever. And just in case you're not remembering or you missed that part, what he's saying is that if the therapist is not sure if the patient response is coming from the bottom corner or one of the upper corners, to just accept that they don't know. Don't jump to a conclusion. Don't be presumptuous. Just you don't know and let it be at that. Just basically hang out in not knowing until you have more clarity, which is such an important thing because all too often the therapist is anxious and just feels that they have to know all the time. And they just come to some conclusion that may not be the case. Bo, would love to hear from you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So just beating off or coming off a little bit of what you were just saying, Johannes, jumping to conclusions or making an assumptions. So I think this was what I was trying to say earlier. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I was talking to Anne directly, but I was also talking about my own experience with this, of the interpersonal connection, right? So for me, I'll talk more offline next time we have a meeting with no recording, kind of why I get the funny about the recording kind of stuff. But part of it, what I'm comfortable talking about, was wanting to hold my composure, right? In the moment, wanting to almost create my own wall in this experience right now. The same way, and I don't want to assume, Anne, that you were doing this, you were going through the experience, right? You were grabbing your tissues and trying to recompose yourself, and you trusted enough to do that. But there was also this tendency to take care of us, right? By kind of containing yourself a little bit, right? Kind of through there, right? And this whole experience. And so we do that, right? So we're there's many windows into a problem, like you're saying, Johannes. Don't assume that they can't see the somatic kind of piece, right? Maybe use a analogy or metaphor. That's why I was saying many windows into a problem. I was using the movie earlier, the scary movie, like why doesn't he go this way or that way, kind of thing. That person conceptualizes things through their own experience, right? And so maybe we help them understand something through a metaphor, then that can lead them to more kind of the somatic experience of that kind of in some way, I guess is what I'm saying. I was trying to wrap that all together and I got a little bit off track, but I think you helped me get back on track there a little bit with that, Johannes. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys or not, but.
Well, you seem to be talking about creativity, finding different ways to approach a given issue, different points of entry. I love that. Creativity is really important. And it's one of the first things that goes out the window, along with curiosity, when we get too bogged down by thinking that we have to follow this cookbook recipe, this formula. Good, good. Am I missing a hand? Did somebody raise a hand? Anne, you're muted. Anne, you're muted. You're still muted.
Okay. Unless somebody else wants to say something, but I have something that comes to at the end and also about what Bo just said.
Oh, okay. Well, let's try. I think Stephen, you're hoping to try again with your audio. Yeah, go.
Oh,
Am I? Can you hear me now? I wonder.
yes, yes,
Do I have a voice?
yes, you
Get all
do.
political. Do I have a voice? Oh, I have a voice. Okay. I want to follow up on what Bo said because he was talking about a metaphor. I use metaphors endlessly, endlessly, endlessly when I'm seeing clients. And I'm just wondering, I'm just going to put this out to the group, but also to you, Johannes, of course, because you're part of the group. Is a metaphor then, I wonder, and forgive the ignorance here, is that an interpretation?
I think it can be if
Okay.
if it posits to answer or offer an explanation of sorts, it can be.
Right, right. That's what because I often say, if you're experiencing this, I'm wondering, I immediately think of something like, and I'll say, it's kind of like this, and I'll put it like this over here, and I'll describe the metaphor, whatever the metaphor might be. I can't think of any clever metaphor off the top of my head right now, but I know I use them endlessly in my work with clients. And sometimes I use the metaphor because I think if I say to them, I think that might be a defense, or we talk about what's going on here, and I'm wondering if this what might be happening over here, and I use the metaphor. Then finally they're able to. I think, as somebody said, I don't know if it was you, Johannes, or somebody else said. Then all of a sudden there's oh yeah, and then there's sort of this realization that comes over it, and then all of a sudden when we have that metaphor and I speak that metaphor, which I guess is an interpretation, rather than we calling this is the feeling and this is the anxiety and this is your defense, right? Then all of a sudden, I think, or I'm of the opinion that then all of a sudden the client sort of just starts to open up a bit more. And so as I think it was Yair was talking about the UTA, for some reason, every time I hear that, I think of a UTI, which is a totally different issue. But then all of a sudden the UTA sort of starts to connect again, and then they say, oh yeah, and then they start to add more into their story that they didn't know about before. So I don't know. I guess a metaphor can be an interpretation or an okay, that's fine. And then the other question I would also have quickly, if I can just sort of tag on to this, is I'm wondering if resistance, I wonder, and I'm so lost here, resistance is actually a defense. When we talk about resistance, is resistance actually the defense against wanting to look at the feelings?
It's the use of the defense, isn't it?
Just help me
It's
to
the
clarify
use
here.
of
Yeah, no, so when defenses are operating in real time
Yeah.
in the session, then it's called resistance. So
When defenses are operating in real time, then it's called resistance.
yeah,
I think you can also see it as like resistance is the fuel, is the fuel, and the defenses are like the vehicles that drives the.
Another metaphor. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I hadn't heard that.
Okay.
I like that.
Like resistance is like a force that wants to move someone away from its inner self, and the defenses are the ways he's doing that.
The way in which they do it. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, Davanloo, I think he was just trying to keep it simple. He just said that when defenses are operating with the therapist, then I call that resistance. But that's really savvy. Yeah, I like that. We don't have that much time left, a little bit, and go right ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to mention the most intelligent title of a dissertation I ever saw in the library when I was working on my doctorate was the ability to tolerate ambivalence as a measure of a person's effectiveness. Isn't that great? And so I'm envious of you all. You all seem to just really get on with this chapter, but I'm here swimming in the words, and I'm trying to see how he's going about this graded position. And at the end, it's the best summary of anything I've ever seen in his work, the last couple pages. And it is what I did with that. And was it's from like page the last 3 pages of the chapter. And he talks about the restructuring technique, but then he goes into the 17 steps of the course of therapy. And so I condensed those using acronyms or the first letter of the keywords that we all know about, like patient therapist, therapeutic alliance, TA, so on. And I brought it down to 1 page. And then what I wanted to do with this 1 page, let me give you one example, and then I'll tell you what I didn't have time to do. The second one, reduction of pressure. The reduction of P. Take P off by returning to pure inquiry, eliciting further details of precipitating incident. Boom. So now what I want to do is take all these steps and go back into the text and organize the text according to these steps, where he goes backward and forward, because I get lost in his density and brilliance. And so that, I would really love to know if anybody would be interested in that.
Oh, please send it our way. That's a really
you got it. I sent it to you.
Oh, okay. I can send it to the group. That's a really
yeah.
nice
There's 3 pages, but it's the last page that is where I do this condensing of the 17 steps of the graded approach.
Wow, thank you for that. Yes, I'll share it with the group.
Yeah.
Robert, you get the last word.
Very brief comment in response to you, Stephen, and all of this is a metaphor. No one can actually show you an unconscious. No one can actually show you. They're all structures that just help us to make sense of it. So
But metaphor is so powerful because it gives
Thank you.
people squirming room. It's a wonderful intervention.
Mm.
I'm envious of your ability to use it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks.
A lot of observing.
Yes, Robert, was that it, or did you have more, Robert? You're not holding out on us?
That's all good.
All good? Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, there was an overwhelming majority that voted to do this every 2 weeks. So we'll just do that. Every 2 weeks it is. Okay.
Don't
Thank
load
you.
us up with
Thank you
too
so
much.
much.
No two
Thank you.
chapters at the same time, please.
Okay. Okay.
You're
Thank
going to
you,
have a visitor
Johannes,
over
for
there in your
doing
new
this.
home.
Thank you, Johannes, for
Thank
doing
you.
this for us,
Appreciate it.
because
Thanks,
there's only
guys.
13 here today, and you're here, so thank you.
Oh, it's great. My pleasure. Till next time.
Thank you.
Wonderful hearing all of
It's
you.
good to
Great.
see you guys. Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you, and bye-bye.